You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. We have more than enough news to cover tonight, so let's get right into it. At the top of the show, I want to make this explicitly clear. Viewer and listener discretion is advised. Completely. Whether you are listening on air, on radio, and I hope our board operators at our syndication stations do have their hands over the dump button. We do not have the ability to do that here in this short amount of time. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble and you have kids around, this ain't the show for them. All right, there's going to be bad language. There's going to be some very disturbing footage. But in the interest of covering this news in the fullness and the manner with which it deserves to be covered, in the short amount of time we're turning it around, those things aren't going to be bleeped. That said and aside, let us get to the main story. The situation in Minnesota is escalating. Right now, there are two pockets of rioters. And I say rioters because we have already seen individuals setting fire to things, specifically the American flag and I believe some kind of attempted pile of wood that didn't quite set, like some particular, not scaffolding, but some kind of oldie moldy wood on the side of the road didn't light fire. They didn't quite set the fire right. There's another pocket that did attempt to break into a courthouse in Minneapolis. And this all revolves around the shooting of 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good. And to get into this, I want to show you very first, right up front, the full footage of the encounter. So 2,000 ICE agents from Immigration Customs Enforcement at the behest of the Department of Homeland Security went into Minneapolis and St. Paul to continue the operation of upholding federal immigration law. This is law that Congress has voted on. These are federal agents who have the authority to uphold federal law. Whether state or local governments choose to work with federal agents or not, it is still federal law. And there is an individual here, as you will see on video, who has her car perpendicular in the middle of the road of a couple of ICE agents, and that is when things get ugly. Here you go. So the Honda Pilot, the black Honda Pilot with Missouri plates, is the vehicle that is in question. I should clarify what appear to be Missouri plates. This has been reported by I believe a local affiliate outlet in Minnesota, as well as a lot of independent outlets, but I just want to make that clear. So the agent goes up to the individual in the vehicle and tells her to get out of the car. There are people in the background that are yelling, that have been following around ICE all day, phones in faces, impeding, and we'll get to that. And then things start to get rather ugly.
No! Shame! Shame! Oh my fucking God! What the fuck? What the fuck? You just fucking, what the fuck did you do? You are fucking criminals! You're fucking criminals! What the fuck?
All right, so she yells like that for a little while longer. She's slowly making her way over to the vehicle. You can see the Honda Pilot, which has, as the driver was shot, as the, again, later reportedly, Renee Nicole Good was shot. She ended up careening out of control, obviously, into the other side of the street, into that white sedan. I'm not going to play her just screaming obscenities over and over. She follows the officer, the agent who fired the shots at the vehicle. She yells at him for a while. And then instead of making her way over to the vehicle, she then returns and then doubles back to the vehicle in question. Now, I'm going to cut the footage here because there is some blood and some gore that is visible. I don't feel comfortable showing that on the live stream. So we're going to cut that there. That is the footage of what occurred. Now, there are multiple angles of said footage. Here is what occurred from another angle.
Get the fuck out of our neighborhood.
So there is the individual. You'll notice the same flannel shirt that you saw hanging out of the vehicle of the individual who was shot. You can see her here following around ICE agents and saying things like, "Get the bleep out of our neighborhood." And again, perpendicularly parked in the street. Now, it's not clear as to whether this is one of those streets that has diagonal parking in it, but it does not appear, based on how the sidewalk and the pavement is set up, with, again, the layer of snow and ice on it, as though this is parked on the side of the street. And the reason I'm being very careful and precise here is that it is more important, before we get to the wheres, the whys, and the hows, that the pieces are set correctly. Because if we start making assumptions right off the crack of the bat, based on assuming, well, this vehicle was actually here, it wasn't here, she was in her car the entire time, she was just trying to drive through and they stopped her, that already is not the case. So far, it appears, based on the clothing, unless there is someone wearing the identical same brown shoes, black leggings, and that shade of flannel, then gets into the maroon Honda Pilot. She's told to stop by officers. You hear 3 shots fired from the agent's handgun, and then the same thing. You hear the other woman who was screaming in the other video.
What the f?
Now, again, I'm an important point. We have looked at the artifacts in these videos so far. The 2 videos that I have showed, we know are not AI. Now, that's a terrible thing to have to get to right at the crack of the bat and say, based on the artifact consistency in the video, these do not appear to be AI. By the time we get through the end of tonight and tomorrow, I guarantee you AI footage that's getting a lot better day by day will saturate and ruin these conversations. So do yourself a favor right now. And this is, by the way, not just to you, this is absolutely to me. I actually have a note on my show bullet outline that says, check new videos for AI artifacts before reporting on them. Because we are getting into that. People are already making every claim in the world. The last angle that I have for you is from ABC5. It's a vertically filmed video. And it doesn't appear that ABC5 filmed the video. It just appears that they obtained rights to the video. And this is from a different angle, and you can actually see the agent that was somewhat sort of front swiped on the front corner here by the lady driving the Honda Pilot, by Renee Nicole Good, before he, or as he shoots her with the handgun. This is slowed down, so the audio is going to sound a little distorted. Okay, so those are the angles that we've seen so far. Now, we're going to get into the analysis on this here in just a couple of minutes, but first, on the line, we have Ron Coleman, brilliant legal mind, excellent podcast. We'll see if we can cut over to this now. Let's try that.
Well,
there we go.
What's the difference? So, what's the difference, really?
Ron Coleman.
He just went to Princeton a few years before me.
Good evening, sir. Tell us kind of right off the bat, what is your take on just this mess that we have here? Just right off the top, kind of a legal 30,000-foot view, if you can, on what's going on.
2 main points. 1, absolutely justified shooting, slam dunk. 2, federal agent will not be prosecuted by the state of Minnesota for his conduct in the course of his work. So it's going to be, the politics of it. You don't need, me for, but it's all about politics.
Right.
These people have lost, and part of it is the fault of Republicans and even this administration. They have really been playing patty cake with these people.
Patty cake. For those who may be tuning in, maybe they're not as hooked into politics, and they're tuning into this. Give me, what do you mean by patty cake here?
For a year, the Trump administration has been very, very delicate in responding to acts of violence. And I understand why. I understand the strategy, but they have emboldened. It's sort of like, I think a very good analogy is when you take an antibiotic and you don't finish the course of treatment, you make a stronger bacteria. So they've been doing things, they've been standing up in ways that the Biden administration definitely didn't do, but they have been reluctant to really make the kinds of arrests in riot situations. It's always been the marginal thing they can do. So people have been pushing on cars, jumping on top of cars, towing away. And in terms of local political leaders, mayors and the like, there's been, they've threatened to cut off money. That's all abstract. That's remote. They're going to have to really start pushing. This is a civil war, and we can't lose it, or we can. I mean, if they want Minnesota, I mean, frankly, of all the, if Minnesota wants to secede, that would be interesting.
Well, we'll get to. I haven't had a chance yet. We've just been going through. I wanted to show the footage first, and then actually show kind of the responses, because Governor Tim Walz's response has just been atrocious. I mean, I truly have never seen such a stupid response. And I mean, to actually go forward and suggest, as he did, that the Minnesota National Guard might be deployed in opposition to federal troops. And he said, well, we've never been at war with the federal government until the last couple of days. My God. Seriously, I can't. Obviously, he's in a middle of a major scandal with the fraud, and he's looking for some kind of a social out. But what a thing to say! I mean, forget Fort Sumter vibes. This is a Molotov cocktail through a window, and given that it's Minneapolis, kind of apropos.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've nailed it. It is a cover for his political disaster. He wants to put himself into a position so that if he's charged with any crimes in connection with the massive Minneapolis fraud, that he can say, "Oh, it's all political. I'm being selectively prosecuted." I'm not too worried about that. But here the interesting thing is, the more we've learned about the way they vote in Minneapolis and in Minnesota, the more we realize, if you've ever wondered why these are the people being elected from Minnesota, there's your answer. Because just how many Somalis would you have to import into Minnesota to turn them all into Democrats? The answer is not as many, as more than they have. So he doesn't even really have the support locally. It's all about what is it they call January 6th?
I mean, to me, they call it the darkest day in the history, in a kind of a sense of dramatic irony here. You've heard of January 6th. Now get ready for January 7th. But
what's the word that they called it? The Capitol
sacred?
No.
If you're leading me, I'm sorry. I'm not.
Complete brain passing of gas here. A rebellion against the government.
Oh, okay. Yes, an insurrection.
The insurrection, right?
Yes.
This is the insurrection. This is the insurrection, and the nodes of insurrection here are entirely top down.
So again, this is something that's concerning to me, obviously, because it puts Minnesota National Guardsmen, it puts federal law enforcement, it puts bystanders at risk. And for those who don't quite understand or have never actually experienced seeing the National Guard or two opposing forces put up against each other, it's not like the Revolutionary War. They don't just line up in a field and shoot at each other. There's collateral damage. There's bystanders that get hurt. And one of the major concerns that I have are the innocent people that are in the law enforcement, that are in the Minnesota National Guard, that are the civilians who would be hurt in some kind of a standoff situation. But I want to get your take on this, because I do think that you have a good insight into the motives that people often have. Obviously, if he tries to mobilize the National Guard of Minnesota, and he does so against law enforcement, that is clearly, according to U.S. code, that is insurrection and it is sedition. Clearly. I mean, without a doubt. And he should be arrested. But do you think that's part of what he's kind of going for? Do you think he's playing chicken to either get Trump to deploy the National Guard before he does? Or on the other hand, is he trying to go for a perp walk over this and garner sympathy? Oh, look, Trump's being political. What do you think?
All right. So I mean, let's take a step back. Walz is not a mastermind of political strategy.
You don't say. You're telling me Mr. Pick Six, Super Command Sergeant, Super Duper Corporal Major Sergeant isn't a political mastermind? No.
Right. He's flailing, but I think he's going to what I think he's going to find is that he's not going to get thrown any lifelines by people in the Democratic Party. They might have more interest in this guy Fry, who is really, really repulsive also. But I don't believe, I mean, look, you cannot use, there could be nothing better for Donald Trump than for Tim Walz to try to activate the Minneapolis National Guard. In fact, having already said that was the dumbest. I don't think he gave it any thought, and I don't think that was not it's a focus group. That was came from the depths of his 45 IQ brain. Really stupid. I mean, it doesn't get better than that in terms of gifts.
Well, and we'll definitely cover that as best we can, because we are going to go through all of Tim Walz's little press conference foibles today. I'm trying to do this in the right order, just transparently here, as a guy who also does a show. You know how anal retentive.
I have no idea. You're immensely more experienced than I am, and you're doing something kind of live, which I hardly ever do. Listen, you walk me through. I mean, the problem is in my ADHD brain, I make all kinds of connections, and things don't always come up in a logical order.
You and I both. So let's draw a connection here real quick before we actually get back to some of the core analysis of the entire event here. To the riots of 2020, the Summer of Love, the situation right now regarding potential riots in Minneapolis, of course, as we're going to get to, Nick Sordo is already reporting Black Hawks, and actually zooming in shows they're not just news choppers or Lifeline medical choppers. They do appear to be military craft. They're in the air in Minneapolis. There are some interesting things on flight radar, as there always are when people look at flight radar in tumultuous times. Do you think that we're going to see the fair weather factor come in? It's supposed to be 25 tonight. Right now, I believe it's 31 in Minneapolis and sinking quickly. Do you think that that's going to temper at 6:25 p.m. Eastern, or 6:25 p.m. Central, 7:25 p.m. Eastern? Will that temper any protests, or do you think that we could see some burning down of auto zones that we witnessed during the George Floyd riots?
Yeah, I have no reason to think that will temper protests. People who live in Minnesota are used to cold weather. They are remember that most of these people are professional agitators. They were provided with tents and sleeping bags during the long hot summer. Weather's not going to be a factor. No. They definitely want to. I think they definitely want to get something going here because they're desperate. Their racket is coming apart at the seams.
This is the last question that I have, and then we unfortunately do have to kind of get back and look at some of this footage a little more closely and pick apart some of these claims. What I know that you've looked at in the past, again, although you play yourself down, you really do have a great handle on the legal process of things that need to take place. If Trump is going to invoke the Insurrection Act, how long does that take? What does that entail? And what could be an eventful occurrence while the Insurrection Act is being invoked?
This is something that, as far as I know, it has not happened during my lifetime, my very long lifetime. If the president were to issue a decree invoking or an executive order, I don't know what form it would take exactly. I'm sure they don't really know in the White House counsel office. I've got friends in there. They don't talk to me, but I imagine they're asking, what would this look like? Do we put sealing wax on it? But if he were to invoke it, it would give him powers to deploy resources that he doesn't have now, and it will only be a matter of minutes before some judge.
Oh, you think federal judges are standing by to issue like an emergency stay?
Sure.
Can they issue a stay on the Insurrection Act?
No. But there's a lot of things that they can't do that they're doing all the time these days.
Do you think that SCOTUS would be also kind of standing by? Do you think Clarence Thomas is like, come on, gang, let's get over to SCOTUS and see if there's any judge that flips any switches?
There's no. I mean, look, Minnesota is not Washington. I mean, I'm sure they have some loopy judges there. It's not. It's not Boston, but
it might be Mogadishu, to be fair.
Right, but to my knowledge, they don't have anyone on the bench yet.
I see.
It would only have been a matter of time, but I don't think we're going to get there now. I think we're okay. I do think they're going to try the judge move. Everything that they have tried really has failed. They want to force. This is my political take. They want to force. This has been the goal since the inauguration.
Do you mean they as in the judges? Do you mean they as in the DNC or the Trump administration?
The adversaries of our country,
okay,
who operate through the Democratic Party,
gotcha,
are interested in forcing a violent confrontation. That is what they want, and that's why the Trump administration has been playing patty cake, as you explained to your listeners.
While they're just telling people to get back instead of arresting every person, like for example, at the DNC in 24, when I was on the ground with Julio Rosas, I remember you and I actually got to talk about this afterward. The Chicago police had no problem getting in there and saying, "All right, congratulations, all 20 to 40 people in this one little zone, you're now all arrested." The Trump administration hasn't really done that with ICE or DHS, at large.
And it's really hard to do when you don't have local support. But they're going to have to do it. And what the Democrats don't realize is, because their heads are so far up their own behinds. You can tell that I know on radio. Is that they don't realize just how out of step they are with the vast majority of Americans, including minorities. Look how badly they called the Hispanic reaction, the Latino reaction to Venezuela. They don't know anything but what the most radical people on their side tell them. They want this confrontation desperately. I think eventually we're going to have to give it to them.
Ron Coleman, and again, incredible work. Go follow him over on X at Ron Coleman, RonColeman. Sir, thank you very much. We have to unfortunately, dig back into this, and we'll catch you real soon.
Have fun.
All right, let's dig into some of the specific instances on the claims that are being made. So immediately, we got all of the social media posts from everyone who was an expert on human rights and international law with Venezuela. Everyone immediately pivoted to being an expert on forensic crime scene investigation. And so first we had the statement from the Department of Homeland Security that said today, officers in Minneapolis were conducting a targeted operation when rioters began blocking ICE officers, and one of these violent rioters weaponized her vehicle. This is something that we have seen before. There have been individuals who have driven U-Haul trucks at police and law enforcement like ICE. They have driven their vehicles. They've tried to run them off the road. They have just T-boned. They have sideswiped. They have tried to awkwardly just block the vehicles into a lane next to maybe a concrete median and then have left the vehicle and run off giggling like Stewie and Family Guy. And so far saying they've weaponized her vehicle, that is something the Homeland Security Department does have experience in categorizing. Then, quote, attempting to run over our law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them, an act of domestic terrorism. An ICE officer, fearing for his life, the lives of his fellow law enforcement, and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. Those are the 3 shots that we heard. He used his training and saved his own life and that of his fellow officers. The alleged perpetrator was hit and is deceased. The ICE officers who were hurt are expected to make full recoveries. And then they issue a kind of a causi belli. They say this is why this situation is occurring. And we're going to leave that for just a second because I want to look at the claims. Everything, including the little rating proposed community notes, the community fact-checking mechanism on X and on other social media, is based around why the officer fired shots and was the intent of the driver to run over the agent who ended up firing the 3 shots from his handgun. We're going to take a look at that because, again, it matters. And I don't have a timer on the show. I'm not trying to waste your guys' time, so we're going to get right into it. I looked at this footage for about an hour this afternoon because I want the right answers. People like Ilhan Omar got up in front of the country immediately, wasted no time at all, saying Homeland Security is lying. Just says, you're lying. There was no attempt to run over the officer, and no ICE agents appear to be hurt. Get out of our city. So let's look at the claim here. Now, I have a piece of footage here. The claim made that the lady tried to run over federal officers, and that the officer she was trying to run over fired defensive shots, one of which hit her and killed her. That's the claim that is made. And then the officer being hurt, I'm going to be honest with you guys. The idea is to whether or not we're going to argue kind of like sympathy tokenage as to whether an officer was hit by the vehicle and then injured or not. We will get to a little bit. We're not going to spend as much time with that one, and I'll explain why. So clip 3. So here's the footage you know. I recognize that I'm violating a rule by covering up part of my face. We'll move it to the side here. So you see the agents speaking to the driver. According to earlier footage, she was outside of her vehicle and walking around with her phone talking to ICE individuals. So this is not somebody that was driving through the area. I do not know what kind of vehicle. The tan Chevy, it looks like a Chevy Blazer that is in front. I don't know if that was owned by ICE. I don't know if that's a civilian vehicle, maybe fellow protester, bystander. I have no idea. What it looks like is that the car is at a 30-degree angle, 45-degree angle maybe, in the middle of the street. Not in like a parking line maneuver.
No! Shit!
Okay. She starts to accelerate and turns her wheel as she spins out. Now there's slow motion footage that shows that between the 2-second timestamp and the 3-second timestamp in this video, that she is spinning out. She is flooring it. I nor you have any idea which direction her head is facing when she's doing this, and that matters. We'll get to that in a second. So you can see there are 4 ICE agents in this photo. There's one ICE agent that is on the left, one ICE agent that is on the right and is approaching either the back right door or the passenger door. There is a third ICE agent that is pulling on the driver handle and trying to get her to get out of the vehicle. And there is another ICE agent behind him whom the car is pointed at.
Oh, shit! No!
So here it is zoomed in a little bit. This was me, so excuse the perhaps poor video editing. Now, 2 things that matter. Number 1, which direction is the vehicle pointing? Currently, at this time, the vehicle is pointing towards the ICE agent in front of the vehicle. He is standing in front of the vehicle to say, you're not going anywhere, stop. You're under arrest. You have done something. Law enforcement, whether they be federal, state, or local, is asking you to stop and get out of the car. Now, ICE agents, admittedly, have dropped the, you need to get out of the car, ma'am, and they have resorted to what I like to call military police friendliness, which is get out of the car right now. And she responds questionably. There's the other ICE agent. You can see his eyes and not wearing the toboggan.
Oh, shit!
She floors it and then turns the wheel. She spins out as she does so. He fires a shot through the front windshield. We'll talk about the front windshield here in a minute. And then fires 2 more rounds as she is driving through. It appears that he hit her in the first shot through the windshield. That also matters. We'll talk about that in a second. The following 2 shots are being raked over the coals. Now, I'm going to play this one more time because I want you to get a feel for how quick this all happened.
Oh, no, shit! Oh!
From her gunning it to him firing 3 rounds takes exactly 2.5 seconds on the dot. 2.5 seconds exactly. That is a very quick reaction time.
Oh, no,
Again, car, agent, gunning it, spinning the wheels,
shit!
hits her, loses control. Okay, now, the last claim that was made by ICE is that an officer was hit. We can't really see from that angle if the officer was hit, but this is where the ABC5 footage comes into play. So you can see that Chevy Blazer that I'm talking about. Again, it may not be a Blazer. Sorry, I don't know all the models of Chevy. You can see the officer that is standing in the distance. It's a little hard to make out, kind of difficult to see. I'll try to zoom in here with the power of OBS. She drives forward and you can see right there that the car does make contact with the ICE agent. He's kind of doing a forward lunge into the vehicle. By the way, if you have ever made the mistake of putting pressure on someone in football or wrestling practice especially, who is doing a kind of forward lunge pose, you can very easily tear all kinds of stuff in their legs. I don't know about y'all. I remember my coach talking about that specifically. I'm just saying, if we are making a claim about an officer injury, right there is an opportunity for the officer to have been injured by a Honda Pilot. Now, there was a rather humorous comment because people are saying it's ridiculous to think that this officer was hurt in any reason whatsoever. Oh, it's ridiculous. Oilfield Rando over on X, who I follow, pointed out after Tim Miller, host of the Bulwark podcast and a big goober. Tim Miller had made the claim. He said, they're going to try to tell you that a masked officer shooting into the side window of a 37-year-old lady's Honda Pilot was doing so out of fear for his life. As Oilfield Randall points out, a Honda Pilot weighs 4,500 pounds. That's 2 1/4 tons. Now, if for whatever reason you're Canadian or outside of the United States and you've never been to the moon, I'm not going to convert that into haven't been to the moon measurements. But that is rather heavy. And an SUV is a heavy vehicle. So injury claim, I'm going to say based on this footage, looks very plausible. And she hits him. He then moves out of the way of the vehicle as he's being hit on the front corner. We've seen this multiple times. Please don't try this at home. But if you wanted to, if you were an idiot and you really wanted to make the next Ouchie of the Week award with Wes and his Funk FPV channel, then you could stand at the corner of a vehicle and as it moved forward, it would push you out of the way. And as a little fun fact here, the reason that a lot of law enforcement, when they're pushing through a crowd, pushes you at the hip is because if you receive pressure on your hip, that is a great way for your PNS, not your central nervous system, but your peripheral nervous system, will automatically start to move out of the way. Here's what the officer did. He fires a shot through the front window. I believe that I do have the picture of the windshield that has a clean bullet hole that is an entry impact bullet hole, not an after the side impact bullet hole, which is what a lot of people are claiming, that he fired a shot through her windshield while he was firing the 3 shots through her side window. That does not appear to be the case. And then the rest is the slow motion footage. Now, again, the reason that I am taking the time to go through the footage so slowly, although I do not like making you essentially watch a video and where you know an individual is dying in the video, it is very important to know what the claims are that are being made. Because immediately, the claims that you saw from people like Ilhan Omar, Tina Smith, the senator from Minnesota, a U.S. citizen, has apparently been shot by ICE agents in Minneapolis. I'm gathering information, but the situation on the ground is volatile. ICE should leave now for everyone's safety. So immediately, Tina Smith blames the ICE agent. Ilhan Omar calls ICE and Department of Homeland Security liars. Tim Walz initially said that my public safety team is working to gather information on an ICE-related shooting this morning. We will share information as we learn more. In the meantime, I ask folks to remain calm. He does not ask folks to remain calm for long. Now, I'll show the Trump response in a minute. Walz also responded not to trust the videos that were going around because that's propaganda. Don't get out there, people are trying to tell you that the ICE officer acted in self-defense, and that's wrong. Based on the footage that we have seen right here, on the footage that has been provided, it is clear that the vehicle moved, it spun its tires, moving towards the ICE agent. Now, here's the problem. We don't see which way the lady's head is turned. The reason that matters, whether this is attempted murder or attempted manslaughter in this case, driving recklessly, if you are in an area with a lot of people, for example, if I'm at a red light and then the light turns green and not looking up from my phone, I gun it. Pedal to the metal, I just go. State Road 3, Newcastle, 2 a.m., just out of the Taco Bell, I'm just gonna go for it. And I hit a pedestrian, I'm charged with manslaughter. Doesn't matter that I wasn't looking, that I wasn't trying to hit anybody. If there are pedestrians around and you hit one with your car or you come close to hitting one with your car, you can be charged with attempted or reckless driving that could have led to manslaughter. The charges vary in state to state. A lot of different ways that we have flavored the term and put qualifiers on the term manslaughter. That aside, if she was facing the officer, the idea that she turned her wheel also has a couple of different ways out of it. Did she turn her wheel because she was trying to avoid hitting the officer who was in front of the vehicle and therefore was just trying to escape possibly being arrested or detained by law enforcement? Or was, when she essentially panicking and turning to the right, seeing the officer pull her gun, did she pull to the right on the steering wheel in order to kind of change momentum, or as she was shot, she kind of leaned into it and came back out? We don't know. We don't know. And based on the information that we have so far, the only thing I am going to make the case of is that all of the individuals who are making this woman out to be an angel, the next George Floyd, Jill Floyd, as it were, is wholly inappropriate. Because we do have the before footage. We do have the before footage as to what she was doing before we even get to the event itself. She's following ICE around. And she's harassing them. She's there to be a protester. Again, if it is true that the vehicle had Missouri plates, then also, why are you there? Now, you can move to a city and, not have the right plates for a while. Heck, my plates on my Corolla are expired because I stripped the screws in the license plate right now. You know what? Sometimes that's the way that is. But there are some extenuating circumstances here that are rather strange. Now, we do have some footage of this particular lady, this Renee Nicole Good. Because of what she was wearing, there has been an active operation all day on left-wing activist groups, and yesterday as well, following ICE around and harassing them. And Tim Walz, and by the way, Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis, have encouraged people to do that very thing. I believe that we do it. Maybe it's, I want to make sure it's clip 11. Here we go. So you can see her following around ICE agents.
Get the fuck out of our neighborhood!
The fuck? You just...
All right. So, again, I don't know all of the various ins and outs of the situation. I just making the case as of right now that it doesn't appear that this individual, now, if this isn't the individual that was wearing the flannel that was shot, and this was another person at the location, someone completely different, and this was a person driving through, again, more questions have to be raised. So the thing to do right now is be patient and wait for some more investigation. I think that's a good idea. What has been the most irresponsible move of the day has been to violently escalate the situation. And I do want to make it clear, the escalation has been violent. So immediately crowds showed up and started doing what left-wing protesters and then rioters do, setting fire to the American flag, for one.
I want to jump in here. I want to ask you, where you're at right now, and we're seeing the images on the screen. There's that flag you were talking about being burned here. What kind of things are they shouting, the crowd that's out there? I know they're obviously not happy ICE is there. They've been talking about that. What are they saying? You know, what's the energy like where you are right now? So
that's over on Newsmax. They were covering that particular footage sent over. The situation deteriorated rather quickly. This footage from Fox News shows some brawls breaking out between ICE and other federal law enforcement who's on the ground, and of course the protesters. And then once you assault law enforcement, you become rioters in Minneapolis.
Move! Get out of the way! Get out! Chris, get out the way! Get out the way of the truck! Move! Move! Move!
Now, the low thumps that you are hearing, those are snowballs that are hitting the vehicles. And reportedly, I do not have confirmation on this. I have received a comment from an individual on the inside of Department of Homeland Security on the ground in Minneapolis. Not from someone who was on the scene, but someone who is at the office in which a lot of the Department of Homeland Security officials are located, that there were rocks thrown as well. Rocks thrown or a snowball containing rocks, that's attempted murder. Throwing a snowball, nah. Throwing a rock, attempted murder. Throwing a Subway sandwich, no. Throwing a rock, yes. Not something that you can do. Now, I understand that in Somalian culture, stoning is quite common. Here in the United States, we don't really prefer to do that. Again, though, being that Minneapolis and Mogadishu are rather facsimiles these days, you know. So this brings us over to the riots that are starting to form. So we saw an individual who went up and assaulted a federal official, received a very pleasant bit of pepper spray right to the face. I think we have that particular footage. Yes, here it is. And it seems to be some type of popping round just right to the jaw. Oof.
Get back! Get back! Get back!
They're stumbling around and enjoying the wonderful spiciness that is pepper spray with a nice, lovely orange dye. I'm RFK Jr. Got to get the dye removed from the tear gas, man. You never know what that could do. Then, of course, one of the ugliest scenes. I think we have this full screen up as well. A large crowd of individuals that chased state, federal, and local law enforcement out of the area. So according to the news anchor, I believe from one of the affiliates in Minnesota, well.
Okay, it looks like they are throwing snowballs as the.
Look at that crowd. Look at that crowd. This is Fox 9 in Minneapolis. That large crowd, you can see them chasing vehicles out of the area. Not just ICE vehicles, by the way. They are chasing Minnesota state troopers.
Okay, it looks like they are throwing snowballs as the officers are leaving. So again, I believe it was a state patrol, and we did see some MPD officers who were leaving that scene.
That would be local officers, Metropolitan Police Department officials, or Minneapolis Police Department.
Hennepin County telling us that their sheriff's deputies have not been on that scene, but it looks like as officers are leaving the scene, just having some protesters or bystanders, agitators, throwing some snowballs at them as they leave. We saw this earlier. We did. Well.
So some of those, again, I've seen some of the initial analysis. I personally do not believe that the resolution of the footage is good enough yet to say, oh, that was a rock, not a snowball. I've shared the only source that I have with you inside the Department of Homeland Security right now in Minneapolis, who has suggested that they believe some rocks were thrown. I don't know if that's one of the times that there were. Just being transparent with y'all, then I have less to apologize for later. Andy No has shown with his typical incredible network the emergency vigil, which has been called. So 5 p.m. Central Time, that's just over 50 minutes ago, at East 34th Street and Portland Avenue South. If you are listening to this show from Minneapolis, stay away from East 34th Street and Portland Avenue South. Don't go near it. If you're an independent journalist and you're a friend of mine, I know there are some out there, do not go out there unless you are well protected. I very much recommend wearing a plate carrier. And also, I hope that you have some security with you. That is going to be a dangerous place to be. So left-wing networks are already getting out there and making it clear that they call it a vigil. You and I know it's not going to be what the Democrats did yesterday, where they got out on the steps of the Capitol and, you know, got out there and sang "God Bless America." This would theoretically be a vigil.
Guide her and guide her through the night with the light from above.
That would be a vigil.
Back, back! Get back up! Get back!
I want to jump in here. I want to ask you, where
Burning flags, attacking law enforcement,
Okay, it looks like they
chasing
are
law
throwing
enforcement. That's not a vigil. That's not a vigil. Don't mess with this. Now, the response from local officials, as well as national officials, has been truly atrocious. One other statement from the president, because it fits with just this initial viewing of the evidence here before we get into some of the nitty-gritty stuff, and I will have to scoop out the commercial really quickly just because I'll get in trouble otherwise. President Donald Trump has posted about this and said, "I have just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car, he seems to differentiate between the two. Maybe the lady in the flannel was the one that was doing the screaming. The one in the car, different individual, was driving the car very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, and it's the clip that I'd shown you, it is hard to believe that he, the officer, is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. The situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They're just trying to do the job of making America safe. We need to stand by and protect our law enforcement officers from this radical left movement of violence and hate." Now we go back to the original analysis by the Department of Homeland Security. Quote, "This is a direct consequence of constant attacks and demonization of our officers by sanctuary politicians like Jacob Frey in Minneapolis, who we'll play in a second, who fuel and encourage rampant assaults on our law enforcement, who are facing a 1,300, that is a 1,300% increase in assaults against them, and an 8,000% increase in death threats. This is an evolving situation, and we will give the public more information as soon as it becomes available." I would likely expect some type of communication, perhaps from the Department of Homeland Security's Tricia McLaughlin. If that comes, we will notify you as soon as it happens. Now, it is important to note two things. First of all, both sides of the situation have already 100% assigned direct accusatory motive. And so the pieces are already set on the board. Number two, what ICE was doing in Minneapolis before we even get to this shooting today was upholding federal law. You as a state do not have the constitutional authority to obstruct, to obscure, to advise against the upholding of federal law that includes immigration law. To the congressmen and women who have issued statements from New York to Minnesota to California, all the way down to Texas, all the way up to Maine, and the guy with the Nazi tattoo that's running for the Senate up in Maine, Graham, what's his face? when you get out and make these claims already here to go, you as congressmen and women or candidates for Congress, you have the authority to change the law. Now, the president has prosecutorial discretion, meaning how hard he can pursue upholding federal law. But Congress, and again, states can't say boo about this. And the reason states can't say boo about this is that in the Constitution, it was set up, it was argued very clearly in the Federalist Papers, that people in their own state congressional districts appointed and written and drawn by state legislatures, those people would send representatives to Congress based on the state population, drawn up by state legislatures. And then the state senators and legislatures themselves, who would then elect senators to Congress, now that's a popular vote, but it is still a measure of the state, would endorse federal law. Federal law is, by its very nature, endorsed by state and local law. It's a contract that was fought over fiercely during the Civil War. And that matters. We're going to get back to that in just a second. We have to hop out and pick up the crews from commercial. Don't go anywhere. We have a lot to cover. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast, where everyone out there is making all of the assertions as though they know. So one of the common assertions that I have heard about this particular situation is that the federal agents told the lady obstructing traffic in the 30-degree angle, they told her to leave, and so she was just trying to leave. The video evidence does not show that. She spun out. She threw her tire. She floored it. And by the way, how do I know this? Because if she was just like driving sort of away, after she was shot, her vehicle then continued with that initial momentum at the pace of a release of pressure on the gas pedal until she rear-ended the sedan. You've driven a car, you know, revving up your engine in an initial thrust, that gives a certain amount of momentum that's going to come out of that. That doesn't play. Also, the argument that has been made that the officer shot a bunch of shots through the window as she was leaving, also not true. The very first round has been shown to go through the front windshield. And the kind of hole was left, that is a front windshield shot. It looks different. It's an angled piece of glass. The ballistics look rather different when it's going in this way as opposed to going out this way. So that matters. Flip that. Going in this way as opposed to coming out this way. Now, let's get to some of the Governor Tim Walz has called for protesting in Minnesota out on the streets, which is a choice for sure.
To Minnesotans, I say this: I feel your anger. I'm angry. They want a show. So
Walz gets out, already assigns guilt and blame. He says, I'm angry. He already, just like George Floyd, I know what happened immediately. This is clearly what happened. They're to blame. I'm angry just like you, meaning you are justified to blame Immigration Customs Enforcement. You are justified to blame the Trump administration with this. Judge, jury, execution, already done.
We can't give it to them. We cannot. If you protest and express your First Amendment rights, please do so peacefully, as you always do.
Wild statement. Express your peaceful protest rights, Minnesota people, like you always do. No. Minnesota burnt down in 2020 because of George Floyd and ransacked and looted businesses. Already this evening, we're getting ready to show you the footage of it. People already getting into the riot Minnesota mood.
Can't give them what they want. The hearts and minds of the people in this state are on our side. To Americans, I ask you this: please stand with Minneapolis.
That's a national call.
To Minnesotans, know that our administration is going to stop at nothing to seek accountability and justice. The State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension are working on the investigation. We have activated the State Emergency Operations Center.
That's going to matter here in a second.
State Patrol and Minnesota National Guard leadership is connected with the Minneapolis Police Department, the St. Paul Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, the DNR, and Minnesota's Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
So he has made it very clear right off the bat. He is excluding federal law enforcement and any federal agency, period. He is making it clear right now that Minnesota is not going to work at all with any federal law enforcement official. This is one of the reasons that this entire mess happened in the first place. As we talked about with Ron Coleman, no coordination with local law enforcement. They refuse to recognize that federal law must be enforced just like local or state law. So he's already cut him off. And then he starts making some rather interesting statements about the National Guard.
We have activated dozens of members of the State Patrol's mobile response team.
State Patrol, I'm told, is the state police Minnesota thing. I guess police is too harsh a word for him.
And from here on, I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough.
Laying the blame at Kristi Noem and Donald Trump. By the way, as a reminder, when the conversation of rhetoric comes into the public discourse, when we talk about assigning guilt immediately, calling people Nazis, fascist, encouraging violence, this is a clear example. He makes it clear. Kristi Noem and Donald Trump are the ones who killed the woman in the car. That is what he is directly implying.
There's nothing more important than Minnesotan safety. I've issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard.
That's very, very concerning.
We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary.
Now we're getting into some really dangerous territory.
I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops.
So then he makes the case that Minnesota, his office, is in control of the National Guard. Now, again, you've heard me say on the show before, if you've tuned in to us before, as of the 1930s, no. The National Defense Acts, plural, from World War I through the end of World War II, made it explicitly clear that the federal government has preeminent power over the state National Guard. And it was used dozens of times. Not just in places like the civil rights movement in Alabama, but in Indiana, in Appalachia, with revolts in manufacturing and coal mining. There are a number of times, many, many times, that the National Guard has been called against the will of the state governor. He's making it clear. He's drawing a line in the sand right now. We are the Minnesota National Guard. It's our National Guard. Now, you could look at this a different way, given the benefit of the doubt. Hard to do with Tim Walz, but you could give him the benefit of the doubt and suggest, well, he's really concerned because he saw the people throwing snowballs and possibly rocks at not just ICE, but also the Minneapolis Police Department and State Patrol vehicles. Again, counting on the identification of those vehicles and officers by Fox 9 in Minneapolis. That's a stretch.
They're teachers in your community. They're business owners. They're construction professionals. They are Minnesotans.
Now, this is a serious issue. I have a serious issue with this particular line. It is factually correct.
Correct! Circle gets a square.
But he doesn't get to run that. He doesn't get to trot that out because when the California National Guard was deployed to Los Angeles, what was it called? It was called an invasion of thuggish troops. When the Minnesota National Guard is to be deployed to Minnesota, it's an invasion. Oh, he wants to invade. That doesn't make any sense. Your state's National Guard is made up of citizens and residents seeking naturalization from your state. They serve at the request of the Adjutant General of the National Guard, Army, Air Force, Navy, in your state. That is how that goes. That is how that proceeds. And Tim Walz making the case here that they're normal people. Yes, correct. He doesn't want people to attack the Minnesota National Guard if he deploys them. Again, very, very concerning.
Minnesota will not allow our community to be used as a prop in a national political fight.
That he says right after talking about the National Guard. So he says, I have the National Guard, here they are. And then he postures. So he says, here are the pieces I have on the board. I'm not going to allow the federal government to do X, Y, Z.
We will not take the bait. We will continue to update you, Minnesota, as we get more information. Now I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner.
Now, as he turns it over, things do start to fall apart. So immediately, individuals attempt to storm the Minneapolis federal courthouse.
Out now! Out now!
can hear they're chanting "Ice out now." So from this point, the question then becomes, how is Tim Walz going to bring forth some of this really strong leadership? What about Jacob Frey? The answer is they don't. They don't at all. It is embarrassing, it is awful, and it is pathetic. It is a truly terrible situation, and it's really going to get worse. So first of all, the Minneapolis police chief also gets out in front of the people and just decides to assign right away whether something happened before any kind of investigation. He's already decided who is guilty.
I am obviously very concerned that I have been told that a woman who was sitting in her car blocking the street.
Sitting in her car blocking the street. That would be illegal.
And not the target of any enforcement activity is now deceased.
Okay. To make this very clear, if you obstruct law enforcement, you try to prevent law enforcement from upholding the law. You show up to some kind of a federal officer and you start yelling,
Hey, you can't park there.
Then that officer is going to make you a part of the problem. You can't do that. The idea that you can interfere with law enforcement because that's some kind of like noble protesting right, that's not what protesting means. Blocking the street, not what protesting means. That's not a thing. Just because some middle-aged, menopausal, left-wing, angry woman who has love lives here, hate has no home here, we believe in science and we hate racism, has that sign in her yard, tells you that, oh yeah, you can totally just park anywhere you want and chase around ICE agents and yell at them. That's not a thing you can do. That's not legal. You can't obstruct federal law enforcement. That's the chief of police in Minneapolis. So again, Tim Walz then moves, he comes back as governor, and then starts saying some rather concerning stuff. He tells federal law enforcement to stay out.
Simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough.
What he follows that up with, though, after talking about the National Guard, maybe one of the most concerning statements from a governor in recent years.
Well, I said this yesterday. We've never been at war with our federal government.
I'm sorry? We've never been at war with our federal government.
This yesterday. We've never been at war with our federal government. I think in this case that the National Guard is their main mission. They have a dual mission. There's
an argument to be made here that Tim Walz suggested both here and in prior statements that he is prepared to use the Minnesota National Guard against federal law enforcement. By definition, by the statutes, that is if he were to activate the Minnesota National Guard against federal law enforcement to try to prevent them from going a certain place, by obstructing law enforcement or facilitating crime in any way, shape, or form, that would be an act of insurrection and sedition, and he should be arrested immediately if that takes place. To have a state governor say, well, I mean, we've never been at war with the federal government, but very concerning stuff. Very, very concerning stuff. Now, Nick Sordor points out, based on a video that, and I referenced this in our conversation with Ron Coleman, there are Black Hawk helicopters that are already flying over Minneapolis. Now, looking at helicopters from a distance, there appears to be one Black Hawk that was spotted. Another appears to be either a federal or a military marked helicopter. I'm not going to get into kind of an air show. That's just what's being reported on the ground. That brings us over to the mayor of Minneapolis, the man who's going to have the most direct contact at this present time. Jacob Frey just comes right out and says it.
But I do have a message for our community, for our city. and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis.
He's going to use his big boy words. He's going to use his big boy words. You see this with the Democrats quite often in city or state, federal official leadership. They get out there when they're mad, they use their big boy words. And he does. He's saying, ICE, get out. Again, federal law enforcement has the authority. People running around on social media going, well, actually, ICE doesn't have the authority to make traffic stops. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Federal law enforcement has the authority to make those stops. And the reason you haven't seen a ton of it in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Now, if you go back far enough and you really have seen it, but the reason you don't normally see it, but the DEA made traffic stops in the 90s all the time. Bill Clinton sent out more DEA agents in Ford Crown Royale than like any president. That man dispatched goodness gracious. You could probably point out that half of the Biggie Smalls and Tupac songs in existence actually came directly out of Bill Clinton sending the DEA out, and Reagan as well. Go, my children, go. Yeah, they can make traffic stops. ICE can absolutely as well, 100%, wholly able to do so. And by the way, not only are they upholding immigration law, Congress gave them the money to hire additional agents. Your representatives voted to fund that measure. Congress has already approved it. The states cannot say boo about it. Now, from that point forward, I want to point out, because we've made the allegation before, that for weeks, Jacob Frey has been inciting this violence and making it clear they wouldn't allow ICE to operate in Minneapolis. They have made it clear agitation and protest and obstruction of justice is the order of the day in Minneapolis and Minnesota at large. Sanctuary policies, no questions.
I am increasingly concerned because of the chaos that is being caused by these ICE agents that somebody is gonna get seriously injured or killed. Somebody is gonna get seriously injured or killed. And whether that is an ICE agent or a community member, we all know the tinderbox that could explode because of it. We all know that the federal government is looking for reasons to deploy more and more people to Minneapolis and blue cities around the country. We all know that we cannot afford to lose a single Minneapolis resident because they showed up and decided to protect their neighbors, because they showed up and decided to express their constitutional right to free speech.
Yeah, you can't conflate those. So calling this in advance, Frey makes it very clear. He's like, oh man, you can't just show up and arrest people for obstructing justice. Yeah, you can. You can't. There is no legal pathway here that makes any sense whatsoever, but yet Frey makes that particular claim, makes it loudly. Now, there are two things that have occurred in kind of an update since. So first, Governor Tim Walz, recognizing that it's very likely Trump might call in the National Guard first, is begging people now, sort of awkwardly half begging people not to riot, because he knows that if they do, Trump's going to invoke the Insurrection Act.
Minnesotans, don't take the bait. Do not take the bait. Do not allow them to deploy federal troops into here. Do not allow them to invoke the Insurrection Act. Do not allow them to declare martial law. Do not.
Why would you have to tell people this, by the way? Why would you have to tell people out there in the wild blue yonder? Why would you have to tell your own people, don't take the bait? Don't take the bait to what, riot? You said just a little bit ago, you pinky promised that just like you always do, you're going to get out there and you're going to protest peacefully. And yet here we have Tim Walz saying, please don't take the bait to riot and burn down the city. My God.
Not allow them to lie about the security and the decency of this state. And let's let this investigation play itself out. Let's make sure we protect our neighbors.
Oh, now we're going to let the investigation play out. Now we're going to let it. Oh, hold on a second here. By the way, the crowd is growing now in Minneapolis. Here is the vigil, standing silently and praying. No, absolutely not. So there's a Mexican flag that I can see. You can see sunset in Minneapolis. Lights are going down. Things always get real calm as soon as things get dark, of course. Yeah, lots of footage that's starting to come in. It is a very, very, very big crowd of people. We're going to try to get some of this footage to you. Again, there's a lot that's going on this evening. If you are in Minnesota, you're in Minneapolis, guys, stay home tonight. Stay home. It's a very volatile situation. Governor Tim Walz has appeared to make the case that he is standing the National Guard in opposition to the president's administration. Again, we are already coming down off of a day, today, already, in which there was a major House oversight hearing over the major Minnesota fraud, between $12 and $18 billion in fraud, that has resulted in the subpoena of Representative Ilhan Omar over the possible immigration fraud with her brother husband. So we're going to get to that in just a minute. We're going to let the radio crew head over to commercial. And while they're gone, I do want to talk about, again, I don't usually do a ton of ads here on the show. It's not, necessarily my particular cup of tea. Because I am stressed with this kind of nonsense quite often, because I am going to be up late tonight looking into this as it gets worse, I usually would take some melatonin. And melatonin, you take enough melatonin, you take enough Benadryl, and you're going to do a little hallucinating. I don't care for that. And so I saw a product in which a friend of mine had posted about exactly how. I think you can find the old retweet that proves it. And it resulted in me reaching out to the owner and getting 2 jars, this thing called PreSleep. There's a blue raspberry, and then there's pink lemonade. And I have used it over the entire month of December, the whole month of December. And didn't advertise it, didn't mention it to you guys, and it was excellent. I still use it. This jar is almost empty. The pink lemonade that I have already all empty. It is excellent stuff. In the description, there is a link to grab some. Now, yes, if you do go and enter code TONY10, TONY10, you will get 10% off. That's because the owner of the product, obviously, he knows that we have a show here at the Daily Signal. Yes, you would get 10% off. And by the way, the orders that I've refilled, I have not used this code. I've already refilled my order before we had the code and the affiliate link. I recommend it. That's what I have. As a former science teacher, I'm really skittish about products that promise things. To me, this stuff is better than melatonin. I go to sleep. I don't hallucinate the hat man taking too much melatonin or Benadryl. I highly recommend it. There you go. We're going to get back into some of the news from this congressional hearing, and then, of course, some of the updates out of the situation in Minneapolis as some of our sources get into place on the ground. And, of course, we're praying for their safety. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We are covering live the situation that is developing in Minneapolis. More and more individuals are taking to the streets at this particular vigil site that Andy No had pointed out based on the call to action. And there are, as the lights go down, and the lights very much are now going down, what we are seeing is a larger group of individuals that is chanting, that is yelling. More spicy things are being yelled in the process. Here's the latest clip we have of that. So you'll note that a couple of minutes ago, it was say her name, and then the woman who died in the shooting trying to drive at federal agents. Now, it is rise up, take a stand. Also, why is it that the leader of the chants always has the Free Palestine voice? I've been on the ground at several of these major protests and that turn into riots. It's always that same voice. It's the same person. We all have voices that we recognize from anywhere. I mean, like, you know, anytime you hear Gilbert Gottfried, you know it's Gilbert Gottfried.
Oh, there's a big surprise.
Right? I've heard this voice so many times.
Silent. This is the time to rise up and continue to fight.
I like that. This is the time to rise up and spread your wings. I like that. I do appreciate when individuals over on the left get out and try to do a little Southern gospel, a little revving it up there, and then people who have never sat in a church don't really know how to respond to that. So, sorry, just a little observation there. I do want to talk about the Minnesota hearing that took place today in the House of Representatives, because it plays into this. The anger, the outrage, again, that likely led to the individual who was shot today, driving at federal agents, was ICE being sent into Minneapolis following the exposure of the Somali migrant fraud. $12 to $18 billion. So at the conclusion of this hearing today in the House Oversight Committee, Representative Anna Paulina Luna had this to say.
Chair recognizes Ms. Luna.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. Honorable Robbins, based on your record before your committee, when did Governor Walz first become aware of widespread fraud in Minnesota social service programs?
I would assume that he has been aware of it since he ran for office for governor in 2018.
By 2017, DHS investigators warned CCAP fraud could exceed 50%. What was that information elevated to the governor's office?
Yes, there was an OLA report.
Thank you, ma'am. By 2020, state officials knew feeding our future invoices were fraudulent. We know that payments continued to the AG's knowledge. Did they continue to the governor's knowledge as well?
Yes.
Attorney General Allison agreed on tape to fight Minnesota's own Department of Human and Health Services in exchange for Somali political and financial support. In your personal opinion, do you believe it is a possibility that Governor Walz also made that personal deal, or that he at least knew about the Attorney General's agreement?
I don't know.
Okay. I don't want to rehash what you guys have spent hours answering. We know that there's a big issue with the fraud in Minnesota. So on a number of things, I'd first like to point out, thank you for being here today, but because of your testimony and because of some of the evidence that we've seen brought forward, as well as I'm sure the fact that this committee, I assume, at Chairman Comer's direction, will be soon subpoenaing AG Allison, I would like to make...
Now, I do want to cut away from this to point out, when the state legislators, as well as, by the way, the state legislative auditor, makes the case that Tim Walz very, very likely knew about this, there are a lot of people who see that Tim Walz getting out and making all of the hay that he can about the death of an individual who drove at federal agents, and that will bring us to a quick mail time question that we'll answer here in a second. There's an argument to be made that what Tim Walz is doing right now is very, very political. Now, some of you out there, you'll say, duh. And of course, after looking at a pattern, such as we've seen from Governor Tim Walz over the last several years, nigh on a decade, it's easy to say, yes, obviously, but still, with every situation, you must be required to build the evidence, lest you have a weakest link that fractures the entire argument. So that brings us over to the ultimate outcome of this particular hearing, and then Representative Brandon Gill of Texas, friend of the show, was on a couple of weeks ago. We'll get to Representative Brandon Gill first, and then we'll head over to Representative Nancy Mace announcing the subpoena of Ilhan Omar.
Mr. Balu, again, thank you for being here. Let me ask you, does large-scale Somali immigration make Minnesota stronger or weaker?
Certainly stronger.
Certainly stronger. Do you know what percentage of Somali-headed households in Minnesota are on food stamps?
No.
54%. Do you know what that number is for native Minnesota-headed households?
Well, to be clear, a majority of the...
It's 7%. There's a big difference between 54% and 7%, is there not?
Excuse me, sir, could I answer the question?
Let me move on. We've got a lot of questions here. What percentage of Somali-headed households in Minnesota are on Medicaid?
I don't know.
It's 73%. Do you know what that number is for Minnesota native households?
Again, you're using the phrase Minnesota native households, but the majority...
The number is 18%. That's quite an astounding difference. I think we would agree.
Can I answer the question, please?
Let me ask you one more, and then we can go on to that. What percentage of Somali-headed households are on welfare in general?
I don't know.
It's 81%. What about, let me just ask you, after 10 years of being in the United States, what percentage of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare?
I don't know.
The number is 78%.
So, as we just said, building the argument matters. Building the argument, making the case. It's very hard to answer. Now, he's going to try immediately, the individual that Gil is questioning, is going to try to futz and, kind of butts around and say, well, if you look at the numbers, and again, the numbers do remain correct. Somali culture in Minneapolis is a problem. Somali culture in Minnesota is a problem. Not because of the shade of the individual's skin, not because of the sex of the individuals, not because of the height or the weight of the individuals. It is because of the culture. The culture is toxic. Do you guys know why people don't like being in Philadelphia right after an Eagles game? Because the culture of Philadelphia is to get absolutely wild after an Eagles game. That is part of the culture of the city. Has nothing to, there are white people out there brawling, there are black people out there brawling, there are Hispanic people out there brawling. One of my favorite clips is a small Japanese man who loves Philadelphia and the Eagles so much that he threw a wooden chair that was almost his height at one of my favorite clips of all time. And I say this is a guy who really likes the Philadelphia Eagles. There's a culture to it. The culture of Somalia, the Somali culture, is extremely fraudulent. It honors fraud. It honors violence. The influencers, Somali influencers who have come out from around the country to defend the fraud that took place, those individuals have expressed anger and outrage not at the fraud, but at being caught. At being caught. And so when you have someone like Representative Brandon Gill, who is pointing out that these are a group of individuals that are taking a lot of money and are then not turning anything back over and are not repaying society at large, as it were. And you have, young women who are up on stage saying, well, of course, fraud is bad, and then has a panic attack that she said that out loud, looking at men in the crowd, and then runs off of the stage. Yeah, that's kind of concerning. There are some questions that need to be answered. We'll let him continue here.
So even after 10 years, 78% of Somali immigrant households continue to be on welfare. Do you know what that number is for native Minnesota-headed households?
Again, you're using
non-Somali immigrant-headed households.
If I can just answer the question, when you're using the phrase native Minnesotans, the majority of Somali Minnesotans are as Minnesotan as any of us. They were born in the United States. It's only
So the case that's going to be made here is native Minnesotans. The numbers that Gil is citing here, when he says Somali migrant, again, he's citing the migrant individuals. He's not citing people who are from Somalia who are second, third generation individuals. That's not in those numbers.
Only 8,000 of the 108,000 Somali.
Nevertheless, the welfare usage is astoundingly different. Let me ask you again, does that...
And then you have the case made by Gil that even if we did include individuals who are second, third generation Somalians here in Minnesota, well, I'm in Indiana, but here in the United States, whether they be in Washington State or Ohio or in Minnesota, funnily enough, not really in some parts of Michigan, because not exactly popular with some other individuals of the Middle East in Michigan. The fraud numbers, especially regarding welfare, still very high.
Make Minnesota stronger or weaker?
Again, I'd like the opportunity to answer the question here.
Go for it.
Again, the majority of Somali Minnesotans are born in the United States, as I understand it.
Okay, well, what percentage of working age Somalians who have been in the U.S. for 10 years or more, how many of them speak English very well?
I don't know.
About half.
What are they adding to the United States? Again, the immigration custom, setting aside the federal law the way it is regarding immigration, looking at the cultural significance of immigration matters. Why are they here? Are they here to assimilate, to learn English, to adopt the culture, to build, to pioneer, to be part of the American dream? Absolutely. The idea that the American dream is that you can come here and then live a wonderful life, that's not the American dream. Sorry. The idea that that's what Americans are supposed to let you in for, you come from a really rough place. You also want to be in the United States, so therefore you should get to because you should get to? No, there is a risk and a reward if you come to the United States from whatever country you come from, and you want to work to build the United States, you want to assimilate, you adopt the culture. Like millions of immigrants who came to the country and then left their old culture behind. They took American culture. They made their kids learn English. They left a lot of stuff out to adopt American principles. They became Americans. The idea that, I become an American because I've been here as a temporary protected status migrant for 15 years. No. What have you done to become an American? I don't care if you are a South African refugee, one of the ones that on the left side of the aisle they criticize coming into the country. If you do not assimilate into the country and you still act and talk and live as though you are in South Africa, get out. And that is a significant concern. And the idea that a bunch of individuals have a magical right to impede law enforcement because that truth is uncomfortable for you isn't going to work with the American people. Not going to happen. In the same way that right now, on the foreign policy side of things, that people are suggesting that Americans really don't like the United States, again, capturing Maduro and bringing him to the United States, or capturing the two vessels, one from Guyana that tried to claim, I'm actually a Russian vessel, speaking no Russian whatsoever. That's not going to upset the American people either. These weird narratives that are trying to push these goofy, nonsensical ideas online as though they're standard and normal, and you should feel bad if you disagree with their weird takes and have common sense, that's not going to float. It's not. Now, if we actually go back over to kind of the national conversation now, Democrats have decided, just like Gilmar Abrego Garcia, just like Nicolas Maduro, just like the Covenant Catholic shooting or the Ascension Church shooting in Minnesota, just time and time again, they're going to defend the wrong side. Representative Dan Goldman, a Democrat rep from New York, making this case today. Just bad decisions.
Invading our cities, using excessive force lawlessly with new agents without proper training. And sadly, this was not unexpected, but it is egregious. It was an outright murder. And the fact that the administration is trying to defend the ICE officer when everyone can see with their own eyes.
Here it is. Judge, jury, executioner. He's like, I know what I saw. Right now, according to multiple angles on the camera, it's not as clear cut that she was just trying to leave. They said, hey, you need to get out of here. That's why the federal agent was trying to open her door. I mean, whenever I've shown up to a full parking lot and the parking attendant is like, hey, you need to leave, and he's waving me out, the first thing he tries to do is, open my driver's side door and squeeze my butt cheeks. That every time. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been groped by parking attendant. No, that's ridiculous. That's nonsensical. It's stupid to suggest this. Oh, well, clearly I, Representative Dan Goldman of New York, clearly, I mean, New York, it's right next to Minnesota. I've viewed, maybe it's like Zoran Mamdani, I've been briefed and boxered by my staff, and they've informed me what to believe. This is ridiculous.
That car was trying to get away because it still turned away from the officer after she was shot in the head.
Okay, so at that point, it didn't, by the way. It turned away from the officer after she was shot in the head. No, in the video footage, the car doesn't continue turning to the right and then either circle around in the road or hit the Chevy Blazer. No, it then drifts off to the left and then hits the parked sedan.
The fact that they are arguing that somehow this is domestic terrorism, much less an attack on ICE, is preposterous.
domestic terrorism. Okay, terrorism. When you try to achieve violence, force, or intimidation or obstruction to achieve a political goal, that is terrorism. When you obstruct ICE agents to essentially, when you put vehicles in front of, you're trying to block ICE agents in, that is an attempt to intimidate and demoralize. So they stop upholding federal law. That's an act of terror. It is. By definition. And it's domestic because she was here in the United States doing it to individuals in the United States. It's domestic. It's homegrown. It's domestic terrorism. If you don't like that, tough. Maybe, I know, really cool thing. If you don't want to be shot by federal law enforcement, you don't want to be shot by police officers, two cool things you can do. Number one, don't obstruct agents on purpose and obstruct the enforcing of the law. Number two, don't drive at officers. And you say, but we don't know if she was driving or not. Guys, when they're like, get out of the car, they're trying to open the door, and then she's like, I got to get out of here right now, and she guns it, and she doesn't look where she's going, your carelessness does not expunge the consequences of those actions. Again, if I'm at a red light, it turns green, and I'm, while on my phone, gun it, Toyota Corolla to the max, I shoot off into the distance, and I hit a pedestrian, that's still my fault. Look where you're going. The idea that, actually the federal officer had to get out of the way, that's not how that works, guys. Pedestrians have the right of way on the road. No, it's not going to work. And the readiness, their excitement to get out there and make this case, it's sickening.
This officer not only needs to be fired and suspended, but based on the video, he needs to be charged with murder.
There you go. There's the Derek Chauvining of the situation.
Murder.
And do you think that will happen?
I have no idea what will happen.
Yeah, some staffer looked at him and said, you better shut your mouth right now before you find yourself in a CNN Nicholas Sandman style incident. The smirking at the Native American thing, by the way. So again, just do, may I suggest, the very bare amount. Now, there. By the way, I should say we do know a little bit more now. According to Jacqueline Sweet, an investigative journalist whose work is in The Rolling Stone, The Nation, The Intercept, Politico. Oh boy. She said the woman killed by ICE today was a poet. And apparently her name is being said now is not Renee Nicole Good, but Renee Macklin. She was a poet. She won the 2020 Academy of American Poets University and College Poetry Prize at Old Dominion University. People have rather quickly pointed out that, oh boy, perhaps she had said Learning to Dissect Fetal Pigs, a poem by her about killing police officers. I've donated Bibles to thrift stores, mashed them in plastic bags with an acidic Himalayan salt lamp. What on earth? What on earth? I'm still going to say waiting just a second, but if you believe as a Democrat politician, official, you're going to get out there and say, it's clear this officer is Hitler mixed with Derek Chauvin, how dare they hurt that innocent, wonderful, sweet poet, flower of civilization. I've seen this one before. I've seen it one too many times. And so I would recommend from the bottom of my heart that you are a little more careful about getting out there and deciding that ICE is pure evil. This is the same Gestapo thing that they're trying to say. By the way, you didn't hear the Democrat officials come out and condemn the individual who tried to shoot up the ICE facility in Texas and was trying to shoot ICE officials, but ended up shooting detainees instead. This bloodthirst from those on the left going after ICE agents, it really, really is sickening. I didn't mention this. Sorry, I said I was going to go back to it, and I didn't have the chance to. Representative Nancy Mace did announce, she said, we have just moved to subpoena Representative Ilhan Omar and her brother/husband's immigration records in the Oversight Committee. Federal marriage fraud and knowingly entering a marriage to evade immigration laws is a serious felony, punishable by prison time, steep fines, denaturalization, and deportation. Marrying a sibling is illegal in every state. We intend to get to the bottom of it. End the fraud, denaturalize, and deport Ilhan Omar. So a lot of people very, very angry, shouting super duper ultra racism. It's an interesting time to watch the 2026 mantra of the Democrat Party appear to be defending the kinds of behavior that we are seeing in Minnesota. Whether it be the obstruction of justice, whether it be fraud, whether it be violence. Again, praying that at the present time that the protesters, the vigil, as it were, remains peaceful in Minneapolis. Amazing, amazing comments. Foley Square in Minnesota has also now been reportedly taken over. Apparently, they are writing in red spray paint. At least I sure hope it's red spray paint. Ice kill us. Ice Kius, maybe? Interesting things currently happening. So it looks like, again, I know spray painting the snow, obviously that's not vandalism, but if they've got the spray paint out there and ready to go, vandalism does usually lead to violence in these particular kinds of protests. One man's spray paint is another man's Molotov. So again, we're going to be keeping an eye on that one. We're going to head over to one quick commercial break. And then, of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez now getting out here and giving her official statement. Got to get the smartest woman in Congress to get out here and give us her expert forensic legal take. Obviously, when you're a bartender getting a master's in economics from Boston University, the very first thing I'm looking for you for is, your forensic and investigative skills. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the favorites to be the Democrat presidential nominee in 2028. She's also weighed in. She's seen the footage. She's seen enough. Here you go.
Prosecuted. What we saw today was a criminal murder a woman and shoot her in the head while she was trying to escape and flee for her life.
Trying to escape and flee for her life. Tell me, how many people, go ahead, seriously, help me out here. How many individuals who have complied with federal law enforcement have been killed? Show me these people. She was trying to flee for her life. Federal law enforcement was ordering her to stop out of the vehicle. And she made the decision to floor it at the ICE agent that was standing in front of the vehicle. Again, to prevent her from leaving. You don't have the right to flee law enforcement. I know there's this fun idea that a lot of people have where they suggest, law enforcement says, stop, don't move. And they immediately decide to be the wacky, waving, inflatable arm tube man at your local car dealership. Fleeing for her life. No one has lost their life that I'm aware of. Happy to be, proven wrong here, and I'll gladly acknowledge that. But I am not aware of any individuals that have, I said, hey, stop, right there, you. And then they said, okay, and then they waited, and then they were killed. No.
And I think what we saw today was a manifestation of every American's worst nightmare.
A manifestation of every American's worst nightmare.
Which is their government turning into a tyranny.
Their government turning into a tyranny. Here the Nazis are here. Here we go. AOC. This is what the Democrats are going to run on.
Should be arrested, the officer involved.
I think what we saw was a murder today, and I think that we need, of course.
You said that she was fleeing.
There you go. And again, the media making it very clear. Do you think he should be arrested? Do you think that this individual should be locked up? She makes the case immediately. Well, because she realizes that she's treading on thin ice. You're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to go out immediately and say, well, clearly this person is guilty of, I mean, again, I even made the case with Tim Walz very clearly. that with the DOJ, several federal agencies that are currently looking into probes on the Tim Walz administration, these are the crimes for which Tim Walz could be charged if they decide he has committed certain violations of these statutes. The same with Governor Tim Walz today. If he deploys the Minnesota National Guard and stands them against federal law enforcement, he violates the laws regarding sedition and insurrection, purposefully rebelling and encouraging rebellion. Correct. Then you would bring in the law enforcement. That's my responsibility as someone who's in broadcasting, who's currently on FCC clock. I've been informed a couple of stations have picked us up. We're currently on the air in some places we aren't normally on the air. And so basic, fundamental responsibility after any kind of an incident. I mean, they've decided they're Derek Chauvining it right here, right now. And why are they doing that? Because they want the crowd to demand blood. They want French Revolution right there, right now. And that's a very, very dangerous thing. And so what comes out of this in the next couple of hours is not as perhaps cut and dried as the classic American protest, that as a lot of people believe. We've seen the George Floyd maneuver before. I don't think that it's going to do what they imagine here. We will find out, though. We will, for sure, find out. So that said, rather quickly here, because the Rumble crew has been rather excellent, I should say. Knowing individuals right now on the financial side of things, they can absolutely, if the right government shows up or the left government shows up, they can cancel your accounts. We've seen it. They can freeze your cards. They can decide what you're allowed to buy, what you're allowed to say, what you're allowed to support. Big banks and financial institutions have total control, and they use it. We've seen numbers of instances, dozens of instances over the last couple of years of debanking. It is currently happening in Europe, in the EU as we speak. And so, one of those excellent solutions to this, introducing Rumble Wallet. It's a wallet built for real freedom. With Rumble Wallet, you control your money, not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. This includes your ability to buy digital assets like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin in a secure place. No permission, no middleman, no cancel button. And when you want to support the creators that you actually believe in, you can use the Rumble Wallet app to directly tip content creators securely, instantly, and without interference. This isn't a credit line that can shut off. It's your wallet permanently. It's yours to protect your future, yours to protect your family. When the system fails, when the institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. Rumble Wallet is not about politics. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control today. Download Rumble Wallet now and step away from the big banks for good. True ownership, true protection, true financial freedom. Closing thoughts kind of on some of the news stuff today. It's 8:49. We are quite a bit over where we normally go for show stuff. As the lights go out in Minneapolis, we do have reports of some individuals that are starting to get a little bit rowdy. Don't have any footage of it yet. There are reports that, again, as a larger crowd grows in the particular square in Minneapolis, it really does appear that there are no Minnesota State Patrol law enforcement that are kind of corralling this particular crew. I think it's best to say pray for those who are in Minneapolis. Pray that this involves people walking away, and pray, may I say, that Tim Walz isn't dumb enough to actually activate the Minnesota National Guard against federal troops. That is something that our nation does not need. So with that, we'll answer a couple of mail time questions here rather quickly. I think there are some really great mail time questions. Again, you don't have to give us a super chat and tip us on YouTube or Rumble in order to send a question for mail time. You don't have to donate anything to us at all. For those that do get a YouTube membership and get access to memberships earlier on, get access to videos like interviews earlier on than maybe some of the general audience does, access to some emojis in like the live stream. Again, it's really just a way that people have chosen to tip and donate to us We really appreciate it. So that clarification made. Kevin H. Stankiewicz, he gave $5, very kind of you, and says it's time for President Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act and send in the regular U.S. Army and Marine troops with armored vehicles and helicopters. James Barrio asked the questions, $5 as well. Very kind of you, James. Appreciate that. Says, why is it tolerated? Imagine interfering with a cop like that, even something simple like a traffic stop. So interestingly, the case has been made on the left for years that if a white person was ever in this situation, then, cops would just say, well, you're allowed to flee and do whatever you want and wave your arms around and, argue ad nauseum with the police officer. Not the case. Not the case here at all. And it shouldn't be tolerated anywhere. That's the case that Ron Coleman was making, that there have been individuals far too soft for far too long. And so what you get is a jump from situations where individuals act in self-defense, which is what the Department of Homeland Security is alleging this officer did. And then you essentially go from 0 to 30 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour real quick. Peggy 4169, nice. Joined the Tony Kinnett cast membership. Appreciate that. Very nice of you to join over on the YouTube membership side. DMOG 2217 said, love from Utah. Your show is based. Well, thank you over those y'all out in Utah. Really gorgeous state. Was just there last year. Loved every minute of it. Wasn't expecting to. One of the most beautiful. I think the Utah Rockies are better than Colorado Rockies any day of the week. And appreciate your saying our show is based. Please don't elect that Somali Democrat to Congress who's running. Please don't elect him. So next question. This is from 55 and says, how does shooting a driver make a car stop moving forward? The point of firing the firearm is not to bring the car to an immediate halt. It is to stop the individual from acting with their car like a battering ram. And in some case, if there is a belief that an individual is violent or has violent intent, to stop them from moving. You are not allowed, it is not legal to evade law enforcement. And if you evade law enforcement, you get in a high-speed chase down the internet, the 45s and the 9mm will come out. Absolutely they will. And they should. Or the, maybe I should say the AR-15s. Now, we didn't get to cover this today because of the news, but in Iran, there are individuals in the anti-regime movement that are pulling out the AK-47s to go after regime leadership. And I guess since we've already given quite the viewer discretion warning on the show today, here's what that looks like, by the way. Yep. The point of firing into a car, not just to make the car stop moving. That was in an Iranian regime, one of the mullahs, chief intelligence and police officials in a certain region. So the situation in Iran is certainly heating up. I did have one comment today on that I thought was a little interesting, saying, well, you think that was the CIA? No, that's not how the CIA or even prime defense contracting agencies operate. You don't roll up alongside and fire off a couple of rounds from the Kalashnikov. Also, he was wearing his watch the wrong way. That's just a little fun fact for operator stuff. But alas, over to LDHBs, also gave $5. Again, very, very kind. Didn't have to do that. Appreciate that. And then Pamela Thibodeau, 1899. Close to the age, 1899, that Maxine Waters is. Fun fact there. She also joined the YouTube channel membership. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in for a longer episode of the show tonight. Almost 2 hours. We almost have crossed that dreaded mark. Again, pray for those in Minneapolis, especially those independent journalists on the ground, law enforcement. And above all, I ask you guys to remain safe. And we'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern here on the Daily Signal. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.